"Can you buy us, mister?" a little girl asked, holding a tiny baby close. The cowboy, all by himself, looked at her. This was in Colorado, near Wyoming, back in the cold winter of 1886. The wind was loud, blowing through an old trading post where wobbly stalls leaned like they were tired. Dust and a bit of snow mixed in the air. Under creaky roofs, men sold cows, saddles, and sometimes even people. Thomas Beckett, a 39-year-old man, stood away from the crowd. His coat was old, his hat hid his sad eyes that had seen too much, and didn't hope for much anymore. He just came to buy a horse, not to find love. He swore he'd never love again after Sarah Ellison, his fiancée, his everything, died in a fire years ago. Thomas stayed alone, lighting a lantern under her picture every night, like a promise to never forget her. Then, a soft voice broke through the rough place. "Can you buy us, mister?" He looked down. A small girl, maybe 4, stood there. Her face was dirty, her dress worn out. She held a newborn baby with big, blinking eyes. "Please," she whispered, "we won't cry." Thomas saw her point to a wooden stage. A woman stood there, her wrists tied, head down, hair messy like after a storm. Her shoulders shook under a rough shawl. She didn't speak, just held the girl's hand, scared but quiet. The auctioneer banged his gavel. "Next up, woman good for cleaning or cooking. Comes with 2 kids, quiet ones, starting at $10. Someone laughed. Another guy yelled, "I'll give 5 to make him stop talking." Thomas's face got tight. He stepped up. 15, he said. A man in the back shouted, "Twice that, 35. Thomas stayed calm, voice cold. Silence. The gavel hit. "Sold!" Thomas walked to the stage, gave the coins without talking. The girl, still holding the baby, walked next to him. The woman followed, eyes down. They left the market as snow fell. At the camp's edge, under a frosty pine tree, Thomas turned. He looked at the woman, the quiet mother. "Ma'am," he said softly, "I need to see your face." She paused, then slowly looked up. The light showed faded bruises and eyes full of untold stories. Thomas stepped back, shocked. His voice broke. "Sarah." She blinked. Neither moved. Then, her lips shook. Her knees gave out. Thomas caught her before she fell. His hand shook as he touched her face. Real, alive, scarred, but breathing. "You've got to be Dick Dan," someone said nearby, hand bloody. The little girl held her baby, brother tighter. "My mama's name is Sarah," she said quietly, like a dream. Thomas led Sarah and the kids down a snowy path to his ranch. The quiet pines and snow were so different from the loud auction. Clara, the girl, held her baby brother, Matthew, while Sarah walked behind, head low, shoulders stiff. They got to Thomas's rough cabin, where he'd lived alone for years. He gave them blankets and water, stepping back politely. Sarah folded Clara's thin coat neatly by the stove, then held Matthew gently, like he was breakable. Clara watched, quiet and wide-eyed. Thomas went to the porch, his chest tight. The wind was cold. He whispered, "She looks just like her." But no one alive could look like someone who died 5 years ago. Sarah Ellison burned in that fire, he thought. He'd burned her letters, memorized her photo, cursed the smoke that took her. Yet this woman had the same shape, the same quiet sadness. At dinner, Thomas set out hot stew in metal bowls. Clara ate tiny, hungry bites. Matthew slept against Sarah, his arms twitching in a dream. Sarah barely looked at Thomas, only spoke to Clara or Matthew. After eating, Thomas showed them a spare bedroom. Sarah looked at him for a second, long enough to stop his heart. He thought he saw her remember him. Then she looked away, hugged Clara, and went to the room. Thomas breathed out. He paced outside until it was dark. He couldn't believe Sarah Ellison was alive, but every mark on her face, every scar under her dress, told a story he couldn't ignore. Next morning, he watched from the window. Clara ran in, red-faced and shaking, looking sick. Sarah knelt, kissing her forehead. "Just a little fever," Sarah said, her voice tired. "She'll be okay." Thomas got cold water and herbs from the fireplace. Clara's skin was hot. Thomas pressed a wet cloth to her head, feeling her breathe, hearing her soft coughs. Sarah stayed close, gentle but haunted. She gave Clara water, never looking at Thomas, but he saw how she held her daughter, like she was protecting something more precious than life. Hours passed. Clara's fever got worse. She whimpered, hugging Sarah's neck. Sarah's hands shook. Thomas carried Clara to his bed, wrapping her in blankets. He sat by her, wiping her hair with the cloth. Then he stopped. There, under Clara's earlobe, was a tiny dark freckle, just like the one under his own ear. He breathed slowly. This wasn't chance, was it? The same spot, the same shape, like a mark. Thomas's world tilted. He looked at Clara's fevered but calm face. His heart pounded. If this girl was his, then that woman was Sarah. He grabbed his tobacco pouch. No match, just chewed a pinch. He stared at the stove's flames, jaw tight until the pain steadied him. When Clara finally slept, Thomas found Sarah kneeling by her bed, holding her hand like she could wish the fever away. He walked up slowly, voice soft. That mark, is she really mine? Sarah looked up, eyes wet. She nodded slowly. Yes, she whispered. Thomas swallowed, grabbed a chair, and let grief and hope mix into one pain. That night, Thomas found Sarah in the living room corner, holding a cracked locket. He sat by her. She flinched but didn't move away. He said gently, "Tell me how." She breathed in, then started. After the fire, she was taken. The fire was no accident. She was tied up, hidden, forced to serve, forced to marry, forced to have Clara in secret. They never told Thomas about the baby, never let her write. After her husband died, they sold her and the kids to pay debts. She hid under blankets and shadows until now. Thomas listened, shocked. Her story flowed like a river held back too long. He felt betrayed but relieved. Sarah never left him on purpose. Her silence was her shield. By morning, Clara slept better. Thomas sat by the window, holding Sarah's hand. He looked at the snowy fields. His voice was steady. You don't have to hide now. Sarah let herself believe. For the first time in 5 years, she might be safe. A pale dawn came through the cabin window. Thomas watched the fire burn low. He sat across from Sarah, her face thin, lit by the fire's glow. Clara slept beside her, and Matthew stirred in her lap. Sarah breathed out, voice shaky with truth. The fire wasn't an accident, Tom. Thomas's throat tightened. The word brought back smoke, screams, flames. Tell me, he whispered. She held the kids closer, then spoke in a broken voice. They said I was dead. I saw the fire start, but I wasn't in the room. They said it to hide me. A rich, mean man bought me. He had someone burn my letters, my bed, everything. Thomas's fists clenched. Anger grew, but he stayed still, letting her talk. They took me west, Thomas. Shot me, but didn't kill me. They tied me up, gave me old bread, wore me down. Then they forced me to marry a man with no kindness. I had Matthew in his house. Sarah's voice broke. She looked down, almost falling apart. Then she looked at Thomas, steady. I held on to 2 songs, one for you, one for our unborn child. Clara came months after you were gone. I named her for you. Thomas breathed out, his pulse loud. He saw her face, once soft in candlelight, now sharp from pain, but still Sarah's. A month ago, Sarah said. His temper killed him. He hit me, then fell and died the next morning. No one told anyone. They sold me and the kids for his debts. I hid my face until tonight. Thomas stared at her across the fire. She cried quietly, holding Clara's hand. The weight of her life filled the smoky silence. He stood, went to the door. The cold bit him, wind sharp. He breathed hard, arms aching, staring into the dark. The wind howled like a sad song. Thomas thought of years alone in the stables, saying her name in the dark, keeping her charred photo. He thought she burned, but she lived, carrying their child. The cabin door creaked. Sarah stepped out, hesitant, like a ghost afraid the door was locked forever. She touched his shoulder. Her voice was weak but clear. I tried to die every day, but she kept me alive. Thomas closed his eyes. He felt the world he'd imagined break under years of sadness. He turned, looking at Sarah in a light that was once love, then pain, now hope. He went back to the fire and knelt by her. He held her shaky hand. She looked at him, scared he'd disappear. He said, "The world took so much, but you came back." He gently moved Clara's head as she slept. "She came from us, from love." Sarah bit her lip to stop crying. Thomas felt something loosen, a mix of sorrow and joy. He pulled her to the bench, put his coat over her shoulders. The fire crackled. Outside, the wind grew, but inside, the pain of years turned into something new. Clara mumbled in her sleep. Sarah calmed her breath. Thomas pressed his forehead to hers. "I never stopped waiting," he whispered. Sarah believed, for the first time in 5 years, that waiting wasn't wasted. Snow fell quietly as morning came to the valley. The cabin, smoky from last night's fire, sat like a forgotten wish in the cold. Inside, Sarah fed Matthew quietly, while Clara drew circles in the window's frost. Thomas saddled a horse slowly, every move careful. His mind wasn't confused anymore. It was ready. Something changed in him last night. His broken world didn't vanish, but it made a path. That path was about to be tested. Just before noon, hoofbeats came from the snowy ridge. Thomas stepped outside. 3 men rode up, 2 in brown coats, 1 big man in a black coat and a low hat. The big man got off his horse, boots crunching. His mustache twitched with a sneer. He held a folded paper. "You, Thomas Beckett," he called. Thomas didn't answer, just stood steady, eyes hard. The man held out the paper. "I'm here for a debtor and her kids. Woman's name is Sarah Ellison, once Sarah. Montrose. Her sale wasn't legal without me. That girl and baby are mine by dead." Thomas took the paper, read it quietly. It was fake, a dead man's debt, stamped with a mark no court would accept. He folded it, tucked it in his coat, and stepped forward. "Sir," the man said, pretending to be polite, "you're hiding stolen property. I filed papers in 2 counties. Give her up or face court." Thomas glanced at the cabin. Clara's face was at the window. Sarah stood behind, holding Matthew tight. He turned back, voice low and final. "That's no property. That's my family. You're on my land." The man's smile faded. "Think you can protect them, cowboy? That old badge from 15 years ago doesn't make you the law. We are the law now. We hold the papers, not guns." Thomas's eyes got sharp. He stepped closer, then closer again. He pulled his gun slowly, aiming at the ground between them. A shot rang out. Dirt split near the man's boot. He stumbled, reaching for his gun. Thomas didn't flinch. "I buried 1 life years ago," he said, voice rough. "I've dug enough graves to know who belongs in one. Come back for what's not yours, and I won't aim at dirt." Silence. The riders looked nervous. The horses shifted, scared. The man gave a tight, angry smile. "You're making enemies with big money, Beckett." Thomas answered, "I fought richer men." None had Clara's eyes. A long pause. The man turned, whistled, and got on his horse. "Enjoy your peace, cowboy," he said. "It won't last." They rode off, snow flying. Thomas stood still until the hoofbeats faded. Then he lowered his gun. The door creaked. Sarah stood there, pale but calm, Matthew asleep in her arms. "Will they come back?" she asked. "Yes," Thomas said. "But next time, we won't face them alone." Sarah stepped closer, leaning into him. He felt her warmth in the cold. "We?" she asked. He nodded. "If they want what matters, they'll face us both." Inside, Clara opened the door wider. "Mama," she said softly, "why did the bad men leave?" Sarah smiled, touching Thomas's hand. "Because your papa told them to." For the first time, Thomas didn't argue. The afternoon sun sank behind the ridge, lighting the hills gold. Dust floated under a horse's hooves as Thomas walked beside it, one hand on the reins, the other guiding Clara, who sat tall in the saddle. "Easy," he said softly. "Let the horse feel your legs. Should go where your heart is if you're calm." Clara nodded, focusing hard. The horse trotted in a small circle near the cabin. Sarah watched from the porch, holding Matthew. Her eyes followed every move, every word. Thomas's voice, once strange, now warmed the ground. Clara finished her circle, and Thomas lifted her down. She fell into him, laughing. "I did it," she said, cheeks red. "You did," he said, kneeling to her level. "You were brave." Clara got quiet for a moment. Her smile faded. "Can I ask something?" she whispered. Thomas's throat tightened. He nodded. "I wish I had a real pal like you," she said. The words hit hard, too deep to answer. He swallowed, hugging her gently. Her small arms wrapped around his neck. Behind them, Sarah pressed her lips, tears falling, not for what was lost, but for what she saw ahead. Later, as night came, Sarah sat at the table with an old paper and shaky hands. "Thomas lit a lamp. You sure?" he asked. She nodded. "He'll keep coming, not just for us. He's hurt others. If we stay quiet, we let him keep going." Thomas put his hand over hers. "Then we speak." Sarah picked up a pen and wrote slowly but firmly. "To the Sheriff of Ridgewood County," she began. "I'm Sarah Ellison, thought dead in the 1881 fire. I was taken by Silas Kearney, who runs a secret trade. He faked my death, took my freedom, and has done this to others." She paused, tears in her eyes by the candlelight. She wrote about the Kansas house. People traded like animals, chains, poisoned tea, fake debts. When she finished, Thomas signed below her witness, protector, believer. He folded the letter, sealed it, and put it in his coat. "At first light," he said. "They'll listen. They have to." Sarah touched his sleeve. "Thank you." He looked at her, not broken, but choosing hope. "I should have found you sooner," he said. "You weren't meant to," Sarah said softly. "Not until you were ready to save more than me." Outside, Clara giggled, rocking Matthew's cradle. Inside, Thomas and Sarah sat in the warm quiet, holding on to a fragile, strong hope they once buried but now dared to believe in again. The wind changed as the sun rose over Ridgewood. It felt different, uncertain, but alive. Thomas felt it as he helped Sarah and the kids off the wagon in front of the county hall. The town square hummed with curious whispers. Word spread fast. The lone cowboy from beyond the creek was back, not just with a gun, but with a woman thought dead and a girl who looked too much like. Inside, the hall echoed with boots and quiet breaths. A deputy waved them forward. Sheriff Ezra Malloy stood. In front, arms crossed, mustache twitching as he looked at Sarah's tired but steady face. Thomas stepped up. "We want a public hearing," he said calmly, "for Sarah Ellison, my old fiancée, said to be dead, but clearly alive and full of truth." The sheriff raised an eyebrow. "Is that so?" Sarah took a breath, stepped past Thomas, holding Matthew. Clara clung to her skirt. "I'm Sarah Ellison," she said. 5 years ago, I was taken from a Kansas boarding house the night it burned. Silas Kearney trafficked women, faking their deaths. He faked mine with a bribed landlord. I was pregnant. I had Clara in captivity." The crowd murmured. A woman in the back gasped. Sarah kept going, hands shaky but voice firm. "He moved me between towns. When the man I was forced to marry died, I was sold again. I was about to be auctioned when Thomas found me." She looked at him, eyes tired but thankful, and saved me. The sheriff frowned, chewing his cheek. "Got proof?" Thomas put the letter on the table. "Signed testimony. Her writing. I saw it. She named dates, places, people. You can check." The sheriff read it, eyes narrowing at some names. A voice spoke up. "I know one of those women." Heads turned. A tall woman with silver in her braids stood. Her voice shook. "My sister worked in that Kansas house. We thought she ran off. She wrote once, then was gone." She pointed at Sarah. "I remember you. You helped her hide once." Sarah blinked, remembering slowly. "I knew it," the woman said louder. "They said you died in that fire, but your room was empty. My sister said she saw men drag you out." The crowd got loud. Someone cursed. Sheriff Malloy raised a hand. "Quiet." He turned to Sarah. "Will you sign this for a judge?" "Yes," she said. He nodded. "Then it's official." He wrote something, handed it to a deputy. "Send a federal wire. Name Silas Kearney. Full warrant. Get a judge by morning." The moment locked with ink and silence. The room breathed out. Years of lies broke in the daylight. Thomas turned to Sarah. "You were never lost," he said quietly. "Just stolen." Sarah's lips shook, but she smiled, relieved. Clara tugged her sleeve. "Can we stay?" Thomas knelt. "No one's taking you again." Matthew made a soft sound, like he agreed. The sheriff cleared his throat. "You'll need protection." "Kearney has bad friends." Thomas stood. "Let them come." Outside, the wind rose, but it wasn't scary anymore. It carried change. Smoke curled from the cabin's chimney, now home to all four. The house, once quiet like Thomas's heart, was alive with steps, laughter, and creaky floors. Each morning, Sarah set out river stones, teaching Clara and other kids the alphabet with sticks. It started with Clara, then grew to include neighbor kids. By week's end, 6 kids sat on logs, learning letters with Sarah. Inside, Thomas sat with cold coffee, watching Clara write her name on paper. "My name is Clara Beckett," she said, smiling big. Thomas's throat caught. The name was more than a word, it was a home. Later, after the kids left and Sarah bathed Matthew, Thomas went to a locked room. He pulled out a dusty cloth bundle from the rafters. Inside was a picture of his parents, gone but remembered, and a small frame of Sarah from the summer they planned to marry. Her eyes were clear as ever. He hung them above the fireplace. Then, in Sarah's room, he opened a drawer and placed a wooden box with the engagement ring he never gave her. He closed it quietly, letting her find it. That night, Clara ran in, holding a booklet tight. She climbed onto Thomas's lap, quiet, then showed him. Inside were bright, childish drawings. 3 people on horses, one tall, one with a braid, one with pigtails. Below, Clara wrote, "We found the home you lost." Thomas's chest ached. Sarah stood in the doorway, face hard to read. He looked up, eyes wet. "I don't know what I did to deserve this," he whispered. Sarah knelt by him and Clara. "You waited," she said. "You believed, even when it hurt." Thomas looked at Clara, then the ring he'd hidden. The house became more than wood. It was whole. The wind whispered softly across the high plains. No church bells, no fancy tables, just earth, sky, and air. Path through pain, fire, and silence. It was spring's first morning. Thomas stood on a hill where he and Sarah once dreamed of forever, back when the world made sense. He wore a clean white shirt, sleeves rolled up, hat in his hands, head bowed, waiting. Sarah walked up slowly. Her dress wasn't fancy, just soft white cotton, tied with a cord. Her hair flowed, catching the sun. She held Matthew, wrapped in a shawl. Clara skipped ahead, barefoot, with wildflowers, yellow, purple, pink. A few townsfolk watched quietly. Sheriff Holden, old widow Merle, the pastor, and neighbors who believed in miracles again. No big show. Just people who knew love came in warm boots and second chances. Thomas turned as Sarah reached him. He took Matthew, holding him close, while Clara gave Sarah the flowers. They stood in the sunlight, just them. Thomas looked at Sarah, then knelt. No ring, just prairie grass he'd braided that morning. He tied it around their wrists, voice low but clear. "Not a fancy vow," he said. "No church, no choir, just this. A promise from dust, blood, and lost years. I'm yours, Sarah, even the broken parts." Sarah's eyes watered, her hand tight on his. "I've always been yours," she whispered. "Even when they said I was dead, even when I couldn't say your name, it was always you." Thomas stood, holding the baby. Sarah leaned into him, foreheads touching, eyes closed. Clara ran up, hugging their legs. "This time," she said, "sure, we all stay." The wind stopped, like it was listening. Something changed. Thomas, once the lonely man with dark eyes, wasn't that man anymore. He was a husband, a father, a man who found the woman the world tried to erase, and the child he never knew. He looked at Clara, her face against Sarah's hip. He kissed her. "Hair, we stay, sweet girl," he whispered. "We stay." The pastor said a quiet blessing, but the real moment was when Thomas chose love over pain. Sarah chose truth over fear, and Clara believed families could be rebuilt from ashes. They stayed on the hill after everyone left. The sun warmed the grass, laughter rising from below. Matthew yawned, looking at Thomas, who held him not from duty, but love. Sarah leaned against Thomas, Clara in her lap. Flowers lay scattered. "I thought love was a one-time thing," Sarah said softly. Thomas kissed her temple. "Maybe, but I'm glad we get to finish ours." As the sun set, gold across the plains, the Beckett family stayed tied not just by blood, but by a fierce promise, a love reborn, a life rewritten in dust and wind. If this story touched you, if you felt the wind on that hill or the weight of lost years found, this is just the start. Keep an eye out for the fun online program coming soon. At Wild West Love Stories, we share tales of love that beat fire, time, and dust. Stories like Thomas and Sarah's, where even after death, love found its way home. If you believe in second chances, in promises made with grit, not gold, then join Wild West Love Stories. Like, share, and hit the bell so you never miss a ride. Through the wild heart of the American frontier, we don't just tell stories, we keep them alive. And maybe we find something in ourselves too.